So today I want to talk for a little while from the topic, unprecedented grace. Unprecedented grace. And I'm going to use as a text Philippians, the 4th chapter, the 10th through the 14th verse, where it says, I rejoice in the Lord greatly that now at last you have revived your concern for me. Indeed, you were concerned for me, but had no opportunity to show it. Not that I am referring to being in need, for I have learned to be content with whatever I have. I know what it is to have little, and I know what it is to have plenty. In any and all circumstances, I have learned the secret of being well fed and of going hungry, of having plenty and of being in need. I can do all things through him who strengthens me. In any case, it was kind of you to share in my distress. You know, we're in a very strange season. It's beginning to be what we refer to as the holiday season. Thanksgiving is just a few days away, and then Christmas, Hanukkah, and Kwanzaa are following closely behind that. Before we know it, 2020 will be in our rear view. But in a way, 2020 kind of reminds me of once when I was on a highway, and in my rear view, I saw that the truck that I had just passed had actually turned over and was spilling things all into the street. I prayed for those who were impacted, but I was so grateful that I had made it through to the other side. That's kind of how 2020 feels. Whereas for many of us, this time of the year is a wonderful time of connection with family and friends, a time for parties and punch and good times. This year is very different. There are usually quite a few people for which the holidays can be lonely and painful due to loss of a loved one or feelings of isolation. But this year, those feelings are multiplied. With over 255 people in this country dead from COVID-19 and many more infected. And there are many who will not be at the table this Thanksgiving due to COVID and many other losses we've endured. And due to travel restrictions and CDC recommendations, many of us cannot be with the loved ones we'd like to see this holiday season. Yet there are others going through economic stresses and strains of unemployment. And there's a lot that has changed as we enter this holiday season. And people are reacting in many different ways. Some are sad, some disappointed, and even angry. I get that. I was especially sad this week when I was watching the news and they were talking about how some people who are dying and some people who have COVID-19 died angry. I don't know if their anger was really an expression of their fear or some level of entitlement that it should not have happened to them. I heard that some people even still saw COVID-19 as a conspiracy or as a hoax all the way to the end. Although most of us are not experiencing anything nearly as extreme as these things, we're all feeling a mix of things that we've never experienced before. I don't know what Webster's word for this year would be, but my vote is that the word for this year would be unprecedented. From fires to storms to killer hornets, undemocratic political shenanigans, unemployment, racism, not new, just uncovered racism, plus our individual losses and challenges. Unprecedented is the word. But I think as we enter into this holiday season, we need to keep in mind that while we have experienced unprecedented problems, we have also received unprecedented grace. Yes, we faced and are still facing some challenges, but by a mix of our individual and a collective will, God's grace, we're here today. As the old folks used to say, we're here clothed and in our right minds. Grace, that word that embodies God's unmerited favor, that in my understanding really makes no sense. It's not something we earned or create ourselves. Yes, we have tried to do the right things. We voted when we were supposed to. We wear our masks. We try to take care of our bodies and our minds. We try to be good to others. Yet there are those who are a lot healthier, just as careful, and just as morally good who are not here today. unprecedented problems, but there's even still more unprecedented grace. I don't often quote Rick Warren, but I liked when he said, "What gives me the most hope every day is God's grace, knowing that God's grace is going to give me strength for whatever I face, knowing that nothing is a surprise to God." The text for today is written by one who also lived in the midst of a troubling time. The text comes out of what's referred to as Paul's letter to the church at Philippi, or Philippians. As I mentioned before, this letter was actually believed to be a composite of 3 separate letters from Paul to the church. At the time of the writing, Paul was actually in prison, not for murder or anything like that, but for spreading the love-based gospel, or the good news as initially shared by Jesus. True, that was actually a subversive message because it spoke of Jesus as Lord and not the emperor. But Paul's focus in the text for today was to model how those who are in Christ, meaning those who try to live by the love ethic that Jesus taught, he was trying to talk about how they should live. And he was also writing to thank the church for their material support of him. Although Paul had lost his freedom for the work he was doing to spread the good news, even knowing he was probably going to die for his beliefs, he still was not complaining. Like many of us, he had lost a lot, but he also realized he had a lot. He didn't have much material wealth, and the situation did not look good for him, but he had an appreciation for the love that the Philippian church had for him, even though he could not be with them as he had wished he would be able to be. I want to look at that text again, but this time I want to read it from a different translation. I want to read it from the Message translation. And it says, "I'm glad in God, far happier than you would have guessed. Happy that you're again showing such strong concern for me. Not that you ever quit praying and thinking about me, just you had no chance to show it. Actually, I don't have a sense of needing anything personally. I've learned by now to be quite content, whatever my circumstances. I'm just as happy with little as with much as with little. I've found the recipe for being happy, whether full or hungry, hands full or hands empty. Whatever I have, wherever I am, I can make it through anything in the one who makes me who I am. I don't mean that your help didn't mean a lot to me. It did. It was a beautiful thing that you came alongside me in my troubles." When I read this out of the Message, there was something that jumped out at me, where in this translation, it said, "I found the recipe for being happy." Recipes include the ingredients and the directions for taking individual components and making something delicious or useful or enjoyable. What I've learned over the years is that every ingredient in a recipe does not necessarily taste good on its own. A teaspoon of sugar on its own is too sweet. And if I remember correctly, baking soda doesn't taste very good on its own. Even cinnamon on its own is hard to swallow. And that, in many ways, is how life is. There are some things that on their own are not very good, but put them together in the larger context of life, in the right recipe, that even what looked or tasted bad can contribute to a greater good. You know, one of the things my mother makes well and that I miss around the holidays is sweet potato pie. And one Thanksgiving, after I had been in Georgia for a couple of years, I decided I was going to try to make a sweet potato pie myself. Heaven help us. I asked my mom for her recipe, and I just knew I'd be able to imitate what she made. It looked easy from looking in the background. Well, I got everything I needed. I mixed it all together. It tasted pretty good as it was in the mixing bowl, so I put it in the oven. I was looking forward to having a slice of pie and a cup of coffee. And after an appropriate amount of time, I opened the oven to take out my glorious pie, only to find what looked like a cookie in the pie crust. What happened? It tasted okay when I tested it, but it was as flat as a pancake. Of course, I called my mom to investigate what went wrong, and she asked me, how many eggs did I put in the pie? And I replied, eggs? What eggs? I had omitted one of the main ingredients that makes a sweet potato pie a sweet potato pie. And that's what happens in our lives sometimes. We leave out a main ingredient that makes it possible to deal with things when they don't go right. If we have this missing ingredient, we can be like Paul and be okay no matter what's going on in our life, whether we have what we want or we do not, whether we have the health we want and we're trying to endure an illness, whether we have all of our family around us physically or have to connect through a memory or a phone call or Zoom, whether we have the job we want or we're needing to depend on others for help. No matter where we find ourselves, there's an ingredient that helps us to be content. And that ingredient is gratitude for the grace of God. Being content means being satisfied with what you have, what you are, and who you are. It doesn't mean you stop trying to make any changes. And it doesn't mean trying to fool yourself into ignoring the real issues in life. It means being able to stay in the moment without stress or panic or fear. It means being able to find happiness in the midst of real life struggles. Add some gratitude in the mix of our lives, and that enables contentment. Kristen Armstrong said, when we focused on our gratitude, the tide of disappointment goes out and the tide of love rushes in. Gratitude is the expression of appreciation for what one has. It's a recognition of value independent of monetary worth, spontaneously generated from within. It's an affirmation of goodness and warmth. I was reading in Psychology Today that there are some benefits to gratitude. Number one, it opens the door to more relationships. Number two, it improves our physical health. Number three, it improves our psychological health. Number four, gratitude enhances empathy and reduces aggression. Gratitude even helps people sleep better. Gratitude improves our self-esteem. And gratitude increases mental wellness. Brene Brown said, I don't have to chase extraordinary moments to find happiness. It's right in front of me if I'm paying attention and practicing gratitude. If we haven't been practicing gratitude, or if we can't seem to find it, there are some things that we can do to try to cultivate our gratitude. First of all, we could keep a journal or in some way note the big and the little joys of daily life. Or we can write down 3 good things. Identify 3 things that have gone well for you and identify the cause. Or we can write thank you notes to others. There's something magical that happens when you actually write by hand and send something to somebody. Or you can think about the people who have inspired you and what about them was most significant. Or you can engage in mental subtraction. Imagine what your life would be like if some positive event had not occurred. Yes, this is a different kind of holiday season. I would love to be getting ready to go to my extended family in Georgia, the Baptiste family, to have some of Beverly's amazing greens and macaroni and cheese, and to see my friends. I'd love to be in New Jersey with my mom or have her down here with us. I'd love to have the big Christmas tree we usually have, the living tree, the live tree, instead of this skinny artificial one that we've gotten to avoid unnecessary exposure to the virus. I don't have those things, can't do those things, but I can be content because I recognize God's grace right where I am. We have some great memories of past holidays. We have the technology to connect with our loved ones. We are here. Even our loved ones, they ones that don't exist with us anymore physically, they live on in our memories, and we have great memories of our past. We have so much to be grateful for. You know, my family probably thinks I'm a little crazy because every evening I blow a kiss to the sun as it sets, and I say, good night. Thanks for being out today. See you tomorrow. Because I recognize every sunrise and every sunset is a sign of God's grace, a sign of God's grace that nobody can take away. It doesn't cost us anything, and it's more powerful than anything else that I can imagine. I'm grateful when I see the sun and when I see the moon. It reminds me that God still loves me and connects me with years and generations of people who were powerful enough to get through situations that I can't even imagine. I'm glad today because, like Paul, I recognize that God is here protecting us, loving us, and through it all still blessing us in ways large and small. Yesterday, I watched the news and I realized that unprecedented evil is still working its best to steal the presidential election from Biden. I got nervous. But then I remembered unprecedented grace is still with us. And no matter what you may be feeling or facing, we can come back to this moment and be grateful for the many ways God's grace has been working and is still working in our lives. Look for what's good and find contentment. Now, I'm about to go old school on you. But the other thing I did yesterday was listen to a well-known old song on repeat. And know when I'm saying saved, I'm talking about saved me from the things that I do that I know mess me up. But the song says, amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a soul like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found, was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to feel, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear the hour I first believed. And my favorite verse of this song is, through many dangers, toils, and snares, I have already come. 'Tis grace that brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home. This holiday season, let's just be grateful and thank God for unprecedented grace.
Thanks for listening. Join us next week at 10 a.m. Eastern Time via Zoom. Send me an email to drkathi100@gmail.com. That's drkathi100@gmail.com. And I'll send you the information so you can join by Zoom. Well, have a great week.